Hey, hey everybody. It's Esther Goldstein. I haven't been on a live in a while. I am going to wait for Kate Hertweg to hop on. Hey everyone, let me know if my connection's fine. I got a notification saying that my connection wasn't amazing. So I connected to a different network. Let's see if this is better. Oh, here we go. Been invited. Kate and I, thank you all for joining, whoever's on here and whoever's going to be listening later. Um, hey, hi.
Hi. Can you
Hey,
hear me?
first of all, I'm down the hall, my love, and I got you Dunkin' Donuts. So after the live.
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you so much.
So Kate and I are on, Kate, just make, yeah, your head isn't chopped up. Super excited to be on this live with you. Um, we are going to be talking about functional anxiety or high functioning anxiety, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the reason that we want to talk about this topic is because so many times we talk about the kinds of things that people struggle with that I guess are less common or not less common, but are kind of like transitional. Like people go through depression and people go through maybe different phases of struggles, and we talk about that. But I want to talk about a struggle that many of us have. For my own self, like when I was talking about this, I was like, people like us, right? Like I definitely have times where I have high functioning anxiety, and I
hmm
wonder if you could just title for us like what high functioning anxiety is, and then also just like who are you? People might know who you are and some people might not. So can you just like say who you are? I'm gonna get a book so I could prop this up so my head isn't like half cut off. But just maybe like intro yourself and then define high functioning anxiety. So
Sure.
right back. Okay.
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everyone. I see people are still hopping on, which is wonderful. My name is Kate Hertweg. I am a licensed creative arts therapist, and I'm one of the trauma psychotherapists here at Integrative. So happy to be here. And hi, I see people waving. And to talk about high function anxiety, I think, Esther, you put it so clearly and explained it so well, even just briefly. It's a type of anxiety that actually doesn't really have an official diagnosis. And it's an anxiety that can fly under the radar because of how it presents, right? I think you posted on your story yesterday about this, that high function anxiety can be this really exhausting experience for the person who has it, because it's an exhausting experience in your body, and then your outward presentation might be high functioning. This is a person that goes to work, is probably really high achieving at work, gets promotions, gets all their work done, maybe socially is a social high achiever, coming off very friendly. You wouldn't know, right? You wouldn't know that maybe a person with high functioning anxiety has anxiety, right? And behind the curtain of the smile, behind the curtain of the friendliness or the what appears to be calmness, behind the scenes is self-doubt, the inability to say no, overthinking, perfectionism that leads to procrastination, and this experience that is what we know about maybe the stereotypical idea of anxiety is this internal experience of that, right? So it's this person that on the outside, and maybe you really resonate with this, right? Maybe on the outside, you're able to go to work and you do everything. You go to the gym, you eat healthy, the whole shebang. And then inside, you're exhausted and you feel almost like maybe you're performing and there's a struggle on the inside. So you're going home and you're realizing that all day, although everyone saw that you're like perfect and this ideal person, you've been struggling all day. And it was really hard to complete all of those tasks.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I want to add. What I want Our
Oh, Esther, you're breaking up.
am I
I
breaking up?
can't, yeah, I can't hear you that well.
Okay, so 1 second. Give me a second. Right now,
It's like in and out. Maybe your mic is covered.
is it right now?
Now it's good.
Okay. Tell me if it's better now.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, thank
Okay.
you. Thank you for telling me. The reason that I loved what our media person did in terms of the image was she called it like functional anxiety. And I'm like, hey, I like that because we all need anxiety to function, right? There's anxiety that says like, hey, you have to get your tasks done. You need to wake up. You have a to-do list, move along. And then there's like the non-functional anxiety, which is kind of like panic attacks, intrusive thoughts that impact your ability to function, avoidance, right? Like avoiding social situations, avoiding work, staying inside, socially engaging or engaging in other activities like um, maybe like involving prayer or self-care or things like preparing food and things like that, right? That would be good for your health. Now, the reason I want to talk about the high functioning anxiety is that what happens is that half of the problem, and Kate, you tell me half of the problem, and then we'll talk about how we can help you. But half of the problem is that people feel like I don't know what's wrong with me, right? Especially people who either have gone through struggles, like have had anxiety or have had depression. They're like, no, I went through a phase where I struggled, but when it comes to this, like I don't understand. Like my life is better, or I'm not in a place of crisis. So why is my body and mind so exhausted, right?
Hmm.
And the fact that there's something called high functioning anxiety, and it's the same with high functioning depression. Like high functioning means like on an external level or to the people in your life or to the world, you're functional. Okay, so it's not that you're non-functional, and if you are non-functional, that's a whole different conversation. But you're functioning, but you are struggling and you're exhausted, and your mind is working overtime, and your body is working overtime just to function, right? So people who have high functioning anxiety, it's not that they are not getting stuff done, or maybe they are, and maybe they're not being as efficient, but the amount of energy it takes to get stuff done, like going to the grocery store and coming home, can exhaust you as if you ran a marathon.
Hmm.
And then you're wondering what's going on. So what's going on is that you have this buzzing anxiety in the back of your mind and body that's tiring you out. So you're not crazy. So that's like just number one. If you feel exhausted, irritated, doubtful, insecure, just are having this underlying piece of anxiety, you don't have to have like this like official diagnostic criteria. But it likely falls into the category of high functioning anxiety. So I just want to name that, like you're not nuts at all, and it's a real term. Um, yeah, go on.
Well, I just want to say it's so incredibly validating. And I remember the first time I learned about high functioning anxiety, it was like this wave of relief because it made so much sense. And you put it so clearly that like I am functioning. What is wrong with me? Right? I'm still feeling exhausted. Going to the supermarket is so exhausting, but I'm in such a better place. I was maybe more anxious, and why am I feeling this way? And there's such this invalidating experience when we're not sure of what's really going on, even though, right, we are achieving, or like you said, some things are falling through the cracks. And what I really want to point out is it's not always like I think when we think about anxiety, sometimes it's like there's the anxious thoughts, right? But sometimes it's just a feeling in the body. Sometimes it's just that exhausting feeling. Sometimes it's the inability to settle, right? So you've had such a long day, and then you come home and you're finally able to relax, but you can't actually relax. So
Mm,
you're on the couch and your body is buzzing, right? So there's this piece to anxiety that doesn't have to be what maybe we think about, the mental piece about thoughts or worries. It could also just be that feeling and that experience in the body of exhaustion, of that constantly on, not able to turn off, that kind of experience.
and I wonder if we could just yeah with that for a moment, because to me, my hope in today's conversation, even if we just talk about this term body anxiety, I feel like we would be accomplishing a lot because
Yeah.
think that so many times, I know for my own self or even with friends or colleagues or clients, sometimes people will say, well, what are you thinking about? And like, sometimes it's a thought, sometimes it's not a thought. The body is just having, right? At our practice, we work a lot with like the body beliefs, working with like memories or emotions that are kept or trapped or even held on the body that don't always have words. And many times you don't even need to find a word. It's like we don't have to climb up in the cognitive ladder. But I wonder, Kate, if we could just hang out with that for a minute. Um, the concept of sometimes body anxiety is what it's about. And you're talking about like someone you might have a long day and you come home and you want to relax, but you just can't relax, right? That's when people end up turning to like opening their computer and continuing to work, or turning to alcohol, or just emotionally numbing and shutting down, or right, not really the body's inability to really like de-stress and unwind. So that's one of the pieces. Can I add something else as well?
Yeah.
So I think the other piece is some people even wake up with this high functioning anxiety. Like it's not even that they started their day, but they wake up with this feeling of pressure, or this feeling of like, I can get everything done, or I probably will get everything done. Or it's not even about getting things done, but it's just so tiring to be in their body. Right?
Or a feeling of urgency, right?
Yes.
Intense urgency. Yeah. That everything has to get done right now and as fast as possible. So
like maybe at the end of a day you can't settle, but maybe it's that it's even in the morning or sometime during the day or whenever it is, right? And there might not be an external stressor. And it's almost like I know for my own self, when I have high functioning anxiety, it's almost like I wake up and it almost feels like there's this wave of like, move, Esther, move, 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 like get it done. And my kiddo will be like, Mom, I thought you taught me about patience, right?
yeah.
And it's like, wow, like, you're right, honey. And then it makes me pause and be like, what's happening? Having something clearly inside is having a hard time of being like, it's the morning time and these things are going to be going on. And what's happening internally, that energy is kind of very spun off. It's like an energy. Yeah.
I wanna land on one thing that you said, and we're talking about like leaning into like practical tools, right? Things that are actually going to help. You said something which I think is so important and a practical piece that I'll bring in as an example later on, but that ability to stop and be like, oh wait, hold on 1 second, let's slow down, let's have some patience, right? And it's like the mornings that I feel that urgency, for me, that's my cat, right? My cat goes down the hallway, meows at me, and I take a slow second to like pet her and be with her. And like, that's my moment to be like, oh, wait, here's my day, and to slow down, right? But when you're just leaning into the idea that, oh, maybe I do have high functioning anxiety, those practical pieces, those practical things that say, hey, just pause, might not be in place. Right. And that's a really important place to start. It's like, how do we help ourselves have those pause buttons? Because life in general is go, go, go. Right. I know we're from New York, right? So we were talking about this last week, how New York is so go, 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 right? So it's like just society in general. And then we take that other piece to it. It's like, yes, how do we help pause? And in that pause, we can help teach our body little bit by little bit that it can settle, and that capacity to settle widens, and then that anxiety may soften over time.
I love that you're saying. So I just want to say, so number one, which I love what you're saying, and then maybe let's shift it to like the practical pieces, is that there's two pieces, right? You're saying like number one, like acknowledging or labeling or just understanding, right? The education of like, it's possible you have high functioning anxiety. It might be that you live in New York, right? Everyone's like, people are sometimes like, don't give me a diagnosis. Just say anxiety because I'm a New Yorker. I'm like, you're from New York? You're from Long Island? You're from New York? No, if you're from New York, okay. But sometimes, especially our practice, right, we specialize in anxiety and trauma treatment. Sometimes it's connected to like having emotional neglect or having gone through a trauma and processing through the fact that the body is constantly in like hypervigilant, or, you know, has certain like body flashbacks or really big emotions, or a really difficult time to regulate, like, you know, to calm down or to have energy to function. That's a whole separate arena, which we're not going into. We could go into it another time, you know, meaning the etiology. Like, we're not analyzing the cause of why you have anxiety. What we're looking at in today's conversation, because the cause is important, because if the cause is just like situational, then you can make behavioral shifts. If it's something that needs some therapy, then a really skilled therapist will help you. I know Kate and I both are big believers that good healing helps. I know from my own experience, like, there have been certain anxiety symptoms that I got help for in my own therapy that kind of made those anxiety symptoms dissipate. And now I have like the regular functional anxiety, and then skills, right? And like create speed bumps, kind of what you're saying. Like, number one, acknowledging that it's there. Number two, kind of what you said, like developing that awareness and almost creating like these emotional or behavioral speed bumps or slow down skills to be like, oh, there I go again. Right? So it's almost like this internal like regulation capacity, and then being, that's a huge deal, like a huge piece, right, Kate? A lot of times with our clients, it's like even just developing the capacity of, like, we were talking about this in Kate consultation, right? We were talking about like one of sometimes with treatment, it's not always about jumping into like a therapeutic intervention. It's like first even raising awareness, right? Let's just notice when you get agitated. Let's just notice when you start spacing out or when you start panicking, right? So it starts slowly starting to widen that window of awareness, and then we're going to work with whatever we notice. So, so noticing it and then becoming skillful, right? To be able to help yourself be more successful, be more regulated and balanced.
Yeah, and I feel like I want to take a moment and speak to anyone who may be hearing this for the first time, or maybe acknowledging something about themselves for the first time, and how maybe both eye-opening and exciting and relieving it could be, but maybe also anxiety-provoking. You're hearing us, Esther and I, speak about the fact that this is so normal, right? That I've experienced it before, Esther has experienced it before. So many people experience this type of anxiety specifically, that if you're hearing this for the first time, I just want to communicate that to you, that you are in a welcome space with people who are experienced in what this actually feels like in mind and in body. So I just wanted to say that.
I love that you said that.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah. I love that you said that, because
What? You broke up again.
did I break up again now?
Yeah. You're good now.
Now am I good?
Yeah.
Am I breaking up the whole time?
No, just that 1 second.
Okay, so we don't break up all the time, just sometimes we break up. Tell me what.
You're breaking up again.
Oh,
Maybe it's your mic.
No, you're on the computer. Still
Maybe
now?
the computer? No, you're okay now.
Okay, so I'm just gonna hold you. I'm gonna hold you. But tell me if it breaks up again.
I will.
Okay. What Kate just named is the fact that sometimes the first step is acknowledging a problem could actually be triggering, right? Like, people don't reach out for therapy, or people don't reach out or tell friends about an issue or whoever, because it's frightening and uncomfortable, right? Like, if you have moments of anxiety or nervousness or tension, but then those moments pass and then you're okay, then you'd rather not think about it, right? And so acknowledging a problem, though it's going to help you come to a solution or help you be resourceful or find a better way to function, often it comes with a really big feeling of discomfort. And so I just want to say, like, sometimes I know, like, myself as a therapist in training and in trainings that I've gone to and go to, I've had so many colleagues or clients or whoever it is say, like, these trainings are so triggering for me, or they're really difficult to sit through. And I just want to say, like, it is uncomfortable. Like, even us having this conversation of like, oh, let's talk about high functioning anxiety, and I'm here like with this integrative team, and Kate is a therapist, and you're seeing us like, functional. I do want to say that number one, I could speak for myself, and I know Kate, you did. Like, I've had times where I so know the feeling of anxiety. And so though people don't present that, right? Most people don't come on and say, I'm having an anxious moment and I'm totally not present, we're just acknowledging that that has been our human experience. And by the way, can I tell you a secret? I remember being in a training and telling one of the trainers, like, oh my goodness, like years ago, I was like, you're so evolved. Am I ever going to get there? And she's like, Esther, darling, I go through waves in life. There's times that I'm doing very well and my life is steady and I've done good healing, or my marriage is in a good space. And then there's times where things are messy. My husband has health issues, or we have to move, or there's a kid with a struggle. She's like, that's what this life is about. So to name that, right, Kate? Like, we're just on here as fellow human beings who happen to also be trained in like good therapeutic methods, but like life has its ups and downs, and we're talking as just like a fellow human, right?
And good therapy, and like I say this to the people that I work with, good therapy is learning how to tolerate and be resilient to life's ups and downs, and to life's chapters that are wonderful and fantastic and sunshine and rainbows, and then those rough chapters you're talking about. It's like, how do we build resilience through all of that and build a toolbox of skills that we can rely on for tough times?
Yeah, because thank you for saying that, because right, good therapy, and it's not just about therapy, but good therapy or good skills is really about developing stronger core self, developing a stronger sense of self, and also having. I remember once listening to a podcast, and this guy said, he was so wise. I forgot who it was. I'll remember, and then hopefully I'll post it. But somebody said, he's like, it's not about not having problems, and I think I've mentioned this so many times, so apologies if you've heard this. He's like, it's a matter of having better problems. You want better problems and better problems. And what
Who said that?
Who? I think it's. I'm okay. I might be misquoting, but there's this guy.
I've heard it before.
Okay, well then I might just repeat the person who repeated it, and maybe didn't create it. My point is that I think the person who I heard say it was John Harrison. I think I'm gonna check. And he works with men. He's like a men's therapist. I believe that he had worked at some point in the Marines, and he was talking about men who have this very like tough run and masculinity, and then he became a therapist later on, and also their humanity and creating space for the emotional experience, because many times there isn't so much space. Society talks about women's emotions, but what about men's?
Absolutely.
I love his podcast. When I was doing a post-grad in the city, I used to listen on the way back. But wait, I want to say something. So it's a matter of like that you are better equipped to deal with those issues. So I know for my own self, like, there are dodgeballs that life has thrown me, and because of my skills, I've navigated so much more gracefully than I have in the past, right? Or different. So that's really what we want to offer. Am I still breaking up, Kate, or no?
No, you're good now.
Okay. So do you want to dive, anything else you want to share? Or do you want to dive into some of the tools or some of the skills?
Let's dive into some tools.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Esther and I were talking about like all the tools that we have in our toolkit. Like, I have a whole list in front of me, but I think there's one that is really, really helpful because it encompasses a lot of the other types of skills that we know to be beneficial in therapy and for anxiety. When I think about skills, what first comes to mind is breathing and grounding in the present and all of these things. And this one tool kind of encompasses all of that. And it's especially effective maybe in the mornings. So for people who are experiencing high function anxiety and you're noticing, like you said, Esther, sometimes it's first when you wake up and the minute you get out of bed, you're like, right? You're a freight train. This skill might be useful for you. So I refer to it as the 10-minute rule to stop anxiety paralysis. So in experiencing high functioning anxiety, and I know for my own self, I've experienced anxiety paralysis, it's this looming feeling, whether that's just in your body or there's thoughts that come with it, like a to-do list, right? There's just this looming feeling of urgency, right? And the urgency is so powerful that it actually paralyzes you. And you're kind of just like in your house, like, I got to get to the stuff, but you don't actually get to the stuff, right? You're just paralyzed in that feeling that's taking over your body. So this 10-minute rule helps kind of break that up and allow your body to soften through that. Now, I will say that this 10-minute rule, like most of these skills, take practice, take learning how to do it over and over again, small moments. It may not work the first time you try it, but try it anyway and keep trying. And I know for my own self, I found this really, really powerful in my healing journey. So without further ado, the 10-minute rule is quite simple. Think about when you wake up and you have that feeling of urgency or that you have to start your day, and it becomes more and more and more powerful to the point where you feel like you're paralyzed. Your legs don't move. You don't know what your next move is going to be. You know you have to get to work. You're just getting more and more overwhelmed. And maybe there's no thoughts. Maybe it's just this feeling. The 10-minute rule is get a cup of coffee, get your morning tea, an ice cold glass of water, whatever it is that would be a morning beverage for you, maybe orange juice, and you're going to sit on the couch with that morning beverage, and you're going to set a timer for 10 minutes. And then in that 10 minutes, you are going to allow yourself, your mind and body to do absolutely nothing. And during that nothingness, if there are thoughts, you're going to try to help those thoughts just pass, right? And return to your breath. And in that 10 minutes, all you're doing is focusing on big, deep breaths in and out, what it feels like to sit on your couch, or maybe it's like a comfy armchair, or maybe it's the floor. What does the floor feel like? What does the bottom of your seat feel like? How does that drink taste? Is it cold? Is it hot? And anytime you feel that anxiety bubble up again, looking at that timer and returning to your drink and telling yourself, I have these 9 minutes to do absolutely nothing. Time goes by, I have 8 minutes to do absolutely nothing, right? And as you keep going through the minutes and breathing and telling yourself, I have this much time to do absolutely nothing, you let your body sink as deeply as you can. And at first it might not be that deep, right? But as you practice, it'll get deeper. Let your body sink into that feeling, right? What's going on in the room? Nothing, right? Maybe you have a pet. Maybe your dog is there. Okay, so your dog's playing with a toy. You're just soaking in that 10 minutes of present moment right in front of you. And you soak it in as much as you can, right? You try your best. Anytime there's a thought, right, you practice a little bit of mindfulness, bringing it back to your breath, bringing it back to the drink, bringing it back to maybe your pet or a little one running around. But then when the timer is up, right, using all of your willpower to say, I'm going to go do those two things, right? And you can leave as an optional option if this works for you, kind of like the pep talk. I know for me, giving myself pep talks works, so I use it. Some people it doesn't work. The last minute you can add, right? You could actually do 11 minutes if you want. And the last minute, you're giving yourself a pep talk for a minute, right? You're telling yourself, okay, I'm going to go food shopping and I've got my list in front of me and I'm going to go. Maybe I'm going to get a coffee on the way because Starbucks makes me feel good, and I'm going to get it done, and it's going to be simple and it's going to be easy. And when this timer is done, I'm going to go, right? It seems simple. And I remember when I first heard this years ago in my own healing journey, I remember saying to my therapist at the time, like, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm just going to sit on the couch for 10 minutes and then like, it's just going to solve all my problems. And she encouraged me, just please try it. Even if it doesn't work, please try it. And now it's one of my most favorite things that I still do on those tough days, to just soak in the present moment. You can do it by a window to soak in the sunlight. If you live close to a nice area where there's trees, you could do it outside and soak in the soil beneath your feet. You can get really creative with it, and it works when you practice it over and over and over again. Yeah. I don't know if you have any questions, Esther. Does that make sense? I hope it made sense.
It totally makes sense. Am I cracking up? Am I breaking? Am I still breaking up? Not to talk if I'm breaking up.
You are okay right now. Maybe like hold your phone up because it was really working. Yeah. Yeah, just hold me.
I think I will hold you. No more breakups. Can't go through. No, but basically, I love what you're saying because what I'm hearing, first of all, you just described it in such a soothing way. Like you put me in a meditative space. Which by the way, you know how like in our team meetings, like we start our team meetings with a meditation, and sometimes, right, the staff says like, Esther, sometimes just hearing the sound of a calm voice, like even if I lose the content, is so soothing. For anyone on here, even if you engage in a meditative script or if you're listening to a story that's just like, I know that I had someone I was working with who would sometimes put themselves to sleep with like a child story that was recording, and it was all about like a teddy bear, and the teddy bear went to sleep and he was tucked in gently by mama bear, right? So sometimes just that sound can be soothing to a very stressed out like mind and body. So I just want to say that. To me, the power of the 10-minute, what did you like to work with the anxiety paralysis is that, um, well, I just want to see something, is being able to like defrost when you're feeling kind of frozen. So it's almost like you have this big to-do list and you want to find a way to like not get stuck by the to-do list. So Alicia, that is like mindfulness. Someone was saying that. So soothing. Yeah. So it's almost like this piece of, to me, what I'm hearing, Kate, is almost like there's this oncoming, like, to me, what I think about is like, just like these it's just my own stuff, like these horses like running, right? Or just like running, or like there's movement or a whole to-do list. And it's almost like for the next 10 minutes, you tell your mind and your body, you can do that. You can get to your list, but for the next 10 minutes, you're simply going to be. And even if you're flooded with thoughts, kind of watch them pass. You're going to get to literally training from a neurobiological perspective, just to go sciencey for a minute. What essentially you're doing to your brain, or what you're offering your brain, is creating a little bit of distance when you feel like you don't have any, right? A little bit of space when you feel like very blended and very like almost like attached, like sticky glue to your to-do list and to your anxiety. So you're creating a tiny bit of space, even if like your anxiety levels are going to be somewhat the same. I always say, I'm like, even 0.01% shift matters, because there's 0.01% and another part 0.01% and another 0.01%, and then we work slowly and slowly and slowly to shift the nervous system. So I love that you mentioned that. I also would think like, oh, you think your idea is actually so amazing, like you're going to help my anxiety with the suggestion, but kind of what you said, like these ideas really have to be practiced, like a lot of things. It's like finding your tools that resonate for you and your nervous system that you get to practice, and then making them part of like your daily routine, right?
Yeah. And I want to add something, because I know like you're really a visual person. I'm a visual creative person. So I'm always like having these visions about things. So as you were talking about the horses like running towards you, there is like a visualization piece that you could do with this, where it's like, if you're imagining, I know for me it's almost like this feeling of like you said, like these things are just coming towards you and you can't stop them, and it's creating this space between them. So if you are a visual person, or you like visualizations, or your brain just comes up with images, you could imagine that while you're doing this, you're also creating like this bubble around you that is like soundless and timeless and happenless, right? And it's like it's growing. So the world inside that bubble is just stopping, right? And that 10 minutes, you can stretch it, right? So mindfulness, I had someone ask me this the other day, like, does mindfulness and meditation actually like change your experience of time? And I'm like, absolutely. When you're practicing mindfulness, it's almost like you feel like you can control time, because you can slow things down just in that tiny moment. And that to go neurobiological, right? It helps your central nervous system then attach to that moment and anchor into the fact that in that moment, right, from this danger perspective, right, anxiety is our body saying there's danger, right? So from a danger perspective, in that small moment, your body's like, oh, wait, there's nothing going on. Okay. And then you can digest, right? So those tiny moments you get to digest over time is more notions to your body that things are okay.
Mm.
And then softens anxiety.
Yeah. Or okay enough. I think one of the biggest,
Okay enough.
I love that you're talking about the neurobiological piece, because like so many times I know for my own self, I'm like, okay, yeah, right. Like, thank you for try this. It's not going to help me, right? Like, actually, like, let's do science for it. We are shifting. The brain is processing, and the brain is like an organ, right? And there's a way for us to help like the neural networks fire differently, even just a little bit. And it likely will work. It might take a while, or you might be in pain. And sometimes people are like, well, I'm in a lot of pain. And it's like, well, I can't take your pain away. I wish I could. But we could lessen the pain, right? So going from like a lot of suffering to a little less suffering, right? And over time, creating space to actually be able to experience this thing called life with joy. But I love what you said, Kate, in terms of like the concept of anxiety is essentially that the body thinks and feels like there's danger. And sometimes it's like orienting to the fact that there's no actual danger physically, emotionally, or mentally, right? But I think a lot of times what happens is that the body develops its own danger of like living with anxiety does feel like you're living in danger. It's almost like your body itself is creating these danger cues and you're like, I want to get out of this body. Why is it giving me so many cues? So then it's like your body, for whatever reason, right? We said we're not going into the digging of the past right here, right now. That's another conversation about how do you undo like the processing of anxiety, right, over hyperactive systems, but or hypersensitive systems. But essentially it's like there was some kind of programming or survival system that was created in your mind and body, and practicing ways to work with high functioning anxiety really helps slowly to undo or to soften the networks in the brain that have gotten so deeply like steeped. It's almost like when we talk about anxiety, it's almost like if you go down a certain dirt path over time, every time it's like you're deepening and deepening the groove, right? Like if you and your friends, I know when I was younger, I would go to this park and me and my friends always took our bikes. I'm like, it became this path. And then once it was like, one of my friends was like, I have a shortcut. And we're like, oh, but it's not even all grooved out. And it's like, okay, well, let's try. And we developed this shortcut to get to that same park. And it took time. And over time, right, you have 3, 4, 5 bicycles. And then we developed this like new pathway, right, in the dirt path. And that's where we went to, and it was a shortcut. So we got to our game, to our like playground quicker. And that's really the point of the brain. Working with these skills for anxiety is like, can we develop literally like a new neural network in your brain or a new neural pathway so that when you try new things, or that when you wake up in the morning, or that when you are socializing, or when you are having to be present or wanting to be present for whatever it is, right, in your life, that you can feel open and not panicked or worried or kind of stuck in that overwhelm. So I'm just like the scientific data, I don't know. I was always skeptical. I still am sometimes, but the more I've engaged in some of this and the more I see the science, like I got a consultation once from someone who was talking about doing like brain mapping, like these brain scans where we won't talk about this now, but it's essentially where you legit see how the person's brain is responding, and you see how there's shifts like 6 months or a year later into like therapy, either with EMDR or just like with working with anxiety or certain behavioral and psychological and some deeper work skills, literally seeing how when the person did certain assessment measures, there was a big shift. So I'm just putting a perk out there to anyone who feels like hopeless or like, holy bleep, like there's never going to be a change. There might be a tiny bit if you actually put the work in. We've seen a lot of shifts. But Kate, I wonder if there's any other ideas. Like I can mention some ideas too. Any other ideas? Because I want to give a few, so some people could choose like, oh, this resonates, or that one doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, I have a whole list. So I mean, the simple one that I use all the time, and I know a lot of people have Apple Watches or they have an iPhone or they just have a smartphone, is setting a reminder on your phone to breathe or to slow down. I know on my Apple Watch, Would love to see that. So cool. Someone's interested in the science. When you have like an iPhone or a smartphone or whatever it is, there's a reminder every hour to slow down or to breathe. When I have on my Apple Watch, it tells me like, oh, it's time to breathe, it's time to stand up. So that's something that's really, really simple and so practical, tangible, that you can put on your phone as a reminder. So that's what I thought of. Doses of nature as often as possible. I know, like on Instagram, in the therapy world, everyone's like, go for a walk, like be with the trees. But if, from a science perspective, we know that being in nature is incredibly grounding, calm, and say random day morning notification. Yes, I love the Calm app. The Calm app is amazing. It has little like games that you can play as well. All of those apps are so useful. So I would say doses of nature as often as possible. If you live by a park, just greenery, yes, that has been created for us is so deeply healing, just in itself, and a reminder to slow down. I put down do nothing permission slips, which is similar to the 10 minutes, but it's like this permission you give yourself to do nothing, whether that's like lying on the couch and you're reading a book, or even just like lying on the couch, right? Sometimes in high functioning anxiety, we can't slow down, right? Or we feel guilty about doing nothing because there's always a voice telling us to do something else. So do nothing permission slips are a really, really helpful tool, because then it's like allowing yourself like, okay, I have this scheduled in, right? Scheduling downtime as well. Scheduling in this time for me to do absolutely nothing. I do that every week, and it's a game changer.
Can I say something, Matt?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I put the phone down though. Can you still hear me?
We can try it out.
Do you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So, as you're talking about this, I literally didn't think about it before, but I have, hey, Joy. So I think I love how people are talking about like nature and sunshine. So there was a colleague of mine who did this TED Talk. Maybe I'm going to post it. I'm saying maybe I have these beautiful dreams, and sometimes I don't pull through, and I don't want to make a promise that I can't keep, but I really think I'm going to look for it. He basically spoke about the window where you're efficient, and then the window where you stop becoming efficient. Why am I saying this? Right? So with high functioning anxiety, it's like often we have this voice that says do more, or there's a lot to do. And I'm all about like doing a lot, like just even as a mom, or the responsibilities I have. This morning, somebody sent me a reel that was like a mom. You hear this voice where someone says, don't do everything, or like, it's okay to not do everything. You see this mom holding like a baby, a laundry basket on the phone, and like in a meeting, and she's like, well, no one's going to do it if I don't. So I just want to name that. Like, there are so many times where it's like, no one's going to do it. I'm not saying don't do things. I'm just saying, I think with high functioning anxiety, a lot of it is like, how do we manage or navigate the responsibilities we have in a way that's still taking care of our minds and our bodies so that we don't burn out? Because what happens is that when you burn out, you're not doing anything. For me, when I hit burnout, I'm not even answering calls. I'm not cooking dinner. It's like chicken nuggets in the microwave. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing. And that doesn't feel good. Then I have to backpedal to get back to where I was at. So he basically, I'll post it, but he basically spoke about the science of like, you have like these like windows of energy. How do you honor that? And how do you literally make space for pausing? Because if we don't pause, or when we don't pause, everything starts like unraveling. And so I think that's a big piece, is like, how do we actually say like, to be productive, or to be present in my marriage, or to have a good sex life, or to be someone who's connected to God, or to be able to pray, or to be able to be committed to my relationship goals, or to take care of my body. Like, these are things that I actually need to get that. So,
bless you.
Thank you. So I think there's this piece of like, instead of looking at it as like, oh, there's this and that, and this is kind of pulling me away from that, it's like, no, good self-care or good ways to manage the anxiety and the stressors actually all serve those bigger goals that you have in your life. It's not like, oh, if I go for a walk, or, oh, if I don't do this, it's defeating the purpose. It's actually like, how do you have behaviors that push that forward?
Yeah, and to add on to that, and I don't know if you mentioned this, like, this specific point, and someone just wrote about self-care, like forgetting that self-care is part of productivity and about having like an efficient and enjoyable life. Self-care is not just like face masks and, oh, let's feel good. It's these tiny, tiny little things that you're doing for yourself that start stacking up over time that then become just part of your natural life. And then therefore things are more in flow. You are taking care of yourself, right? So that productivity window and taking that time to put self-care and those little tiny moments are what stack up to help you feel better and feel like you can actually function in your life without, that anxiety or without that pressure. I know the times when my self-care is like on point because my week just feels in flow and I get to the weekend and I'm like, it's here. I know a week where I wasn't really the best with my self-care because it gets to the weekend and I'm like, oh, right? And it's like harder to recover. So we can start to practice these things and then almost like you're a scientist trying to find the results. Like, how was I feeling this week? Did these things help? Do I feel like a little bit more in flow? And then you can get into tune with your mind and body and know when things are starting to get out of whack again. And it's so normal to get out of whack. Like, I just want to normalize that I don't know if there's anybody who's like this perfect self-care queen, right? Even therapists that can be this way all the time, right? So there's that ebb and flow, and it's like just do your best, and these skills help with that feeling of like constantly catching your tail.
Yeah,
right? That's what I feel. Yeah.
I think the piece about like self-care, by the way, I don't know that we ever are perfect at self-care. I think it's more a matter of like getting better at knowing what works for you. I think like, you're talking about like, if you're having weeks after weeks after weeks where it hits the weekend or it hits like whatever, a specific time, or right, your partner comes home or your kid comes home, or you look yourself in the mirror, you're about to go out and you're just like, oh my God, I look like a ghost of myself, right? Like barking at my friends, or I'm not being present, or I'm being very needy, or I'm avoiding everyone, right? So it's kind of like those could be your cues. And one of the big pieces that we spoke about is even like noticing your cues sooner than later. So you're not at the point of like collapse where it's kind of like, wow, like I need to make a shift, right? And I think one of the other pieces is I know for my own self, like I know, and it took me a long time, and I think that's part of self-awareness and development, like what are the things that I know or what I need to help myself stay regulated or get myself into a rhythm, right? And as things change, it's different. Like for myself, or even I think this applies to parenting or relationships, it's like, wow, like you learn about your nervous system. Like I know for myself, if I'm not physically active, right? Like I go boxing a few times a week. If I'm not physically active, then I start feeling like a certain level of like irritation when I have a certain level of responsibility, right? I have a certain amount, because to me, I'll just talk for myself, like physical movement, like boxing. At different times I do hot yoga. And everybody should find their own, right? If physical movement is your thing, for me, just getting into my body and doing an activity that gets me out of my head really helps me have clarity and is like, okay, I could tackle things with a certain level of clarity and energy, and it gives me like an emotional bandwidth, right? And I think knowing what our things are. I know for myself, like I also becoming aware of what kind of relationships are nourishing for me, right? I think one of the pieces with high functioning is becoming exquisitely aware and sensitive. And I was thinking about this for an exercise for people to do is like sometimes, so I'll finish my sentence first. Becoming exquisitely aware and mindful of the people that you have in your life. And I know that it can be incredibly, it could be a task that isn't like a thing you do overnight. Like it's taken me, if I look back 10 years, I have a little bit of a different friend group right now than I had 10 years ago. Now, do I have some friends that I have from childhood that I'm close to? Yes. And then I've also had friends that I brought in closer into my life. Either there's more relatability, or we speak the same emotional language, or we have a certain level of self-awareness, or we're in a similar life phase. And then there's some people where there's a little less relatability, or I didn't feel as connected to them, right? And there's nothing right or wrong, or different relationships, right? Even like family relationships or even like close relationships. It's like, who are the people that nourish me, that work well for my lifestyle? Like some people, it's like you're in a phase of life where you're single and you know, need to be around people who nourish and support you and aren't giving you these negative beliefs about yourself. Or I know for myself as a mom, I end up spending a lot of times with moms, right? I also have my non-mom friends, but it's like, I think one of the pieces is becoming, you know, exquisitely aware for your own self and becoming confident in what it is that you need. Like over this past weekend, I went somewhere and we were at a certain like friend and they said something and I was like, I just have to say how I love being here because your home environment, like you, her husband, her kids, like they're so relaxed and it works so well for my system and for my little kiddos. And I was like, this is just an awesome environment for us. And it's taken time because I have lots of different kinds of friends, right? And it's like, what works for you? I'm just giving you an example. So almost becoming clear on what works for you and then leaning into that. And you might have some friends that you like, you might notice like, hey, I don't know if I have anybody, right? So then it's like becoming aware of what is it that you need and how do you work towards that?
Yeah, I think that the word that comes to mind, and I feel like this is one of my cornerstones that I talk to the people I work with, my clients about, is like soul nourishment, right? So we have mind and body nourishment, and then like, what about soul nourishment? And that phrase came up as you were talking about that weekend with your friends. I like felt it. I'm like, oh, I know that feeling when you're with your people and you're like, oh, yes, this feels so good, right? And if you don't know what that feeling is like, it's like, okay, how can we help you make choices to get closer and closer and closer to those experiences? Because that's a huge part of well-being is our relationships. You know, our healing can be quadrupled when we have delicious people around us and great friends and great relationships.
Talk about, because like I have another thought, but I want to just focus on this for just a minute. So can I just expand on the concept of soul nourishment, or could you talk about it? Because I guess the reason I went relational for a minute is we all have different aspects of high functioning anxiety or things that come up. And I guess the reason I went relational is I guess I'm just thinking for myself. I realized that in terms of support, my social network outside, right, at work, I love our environment at work, and that's like, right, us creating a community. No, really, I think a lot of it's like, how do we create a community of respect, of having those tough conversations, of being supportive for our clients, offering really good care, but even amongst ourselves, right? Like cultivating this environment of growth and respect and having those tough conversations, because all relationships have that, but just having like a really awesome environment of growth. But I think for my own self, a big piece is like understanding myself, and B, having relationships where I feel understood, or people have the capacity and desire to get me. And I think that, like, just to me, having the right kind of relational dynamics is huge. And that's why people come to counseling, right? It's like, how do we help them understand themselves? How do we understand our clients? And how do we help them cultivate relationships? And you could start with even just one, like, how do you check in on is your marriage or your family dynamics or your social group? How do we help you shift the relationships and, you know, cultivate relationships that are kind of what you're saying, soul nourishment, because relationships matter, right? Relationships really, the people we hang out with, it really matters. Their nonverbal communication of if they respect you, if they want to get you, if they, right? I mean, do you want to talk about the concept of soul?
Yeah, I think what you were, so like, I mean, this is a huge, right, relational piece. We could spend hours talking about it. I think you mentioned a really good foundational piece, right, for counseling or therapy is that first we're going to want to establish a relationship with yourself, whatever that means, understanding yourself and having that relationship foundation with just yourself first, so you actually know what you need, right? Because what my soul nourishing friends and relationships are like are going to be different than, Esther, what your soul nourishing relationships are like, right? So we first want to start with that, is like, get to know myself, my values, my beliefs. Beliefs maybe I want to shift, right? That might be like EMDR. And then once I get a nice solid grasp and I can feel into my gut feelings and I can feel into these really, really important aspects of our relationship with ourselves, then we can talk about soul nourishment and lean into, and those things can happen simultaneously,
Yeah.
by the way. Like in therapy, we can do both of those at the same time. Look at relationships from like an external and then like an internal. Hi, Liza. That's my sister.
Aww.
Hi.
I love that you're like mentioning that, right? It's like number one,
Yeah.
awareness, then builds on that. And I really believe, like, I'm gonna heebie-jeebie for a second, and then I want to come back to a skill. Wait,
Yeah.
did you want to mention anything else on the soul piece before we go on to something else?
Well, I mean, I think the heebie-jeebie way, I'm sure you're going to say something similar where it's like
Yeah.
there's this piece of us, right? And come from a trauma perspective, trauma makes us further away from this piece of us, right? And part of trauma healing, you know, our mission is mind, body, and soul. And part of that is connecting to this piece of us that we really feel is just special, or, you know, from our creator or the universe or whatever you believe in, right? It ties into spirituality, and it's this magic that we feel within ourselves. And then we know that that magic within ourselves is being nourished because we feel our own glow and this own sense, like a felt sense, right? This feeling, it feels amplified when we're around those people that nourish us. So that's what I was going to say. I don't know if you have anything.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. The reason I'm saying that, the reason I wanted to name the heebie-jeebie is because it's not heebie-jeebie. Like, I really believe you don't have to be religious or observant, but from a soulful perspective, like from a spiritual, and I know I'm Jewish, but like anyone who's connected to like this concept of soul and energy, and that we have like obviously a mind, body, and spirit, even from a spiritual perspective, as we emotionally heal, as we get closer to ourselves, as we shift our beliefs of like, I'm lovable, or I deserve to be respected, or I bring love into my life, or I, you know, or whatever it is, right? Life, I can navigate challenges with confidence, right? Or although I'm in this situation, I can be okay, or I can find a way to whatever, right? Like creative beliefs. I can speak for my own self. The way that I show up for myself organically, there's suddenly like people or connections or things that slowly shift. And I think I've seen this as a therapist as well, and that I think that when we do internal work, it really creates a shift externally. And we just, as we become better and healthier, like so many times people say, like, how's therapy going to help me? And it's like, darling, you doing the internal work, you're unconsciously or without realizing opening up, like setting boundaries, right? I'd spoken to one of our staff about like someone who's working on boundaries in a relationship at work or with our partner. And we were talking about how in some relationships you can't set that boundary, or you can't say something, the person won't respect it. And we were talking about like doing the work or doing boundary exercise or working internally, right? Even in the therapy room, you can create an internal shift energetically where when you're interacting with the world, you have an energetic boundary that like people honor, they feel it. Your body language is different. Or when somebody says something, you're not as reactive because your internal system like just has a stronger knowing. And that really creates many shifts. I think the one last point that I want to give Kate, just from a practical standpoint, is that I'm a very aware person. And sometimes awareness, and some people with high functioning anxiety have that, like a certain level of like emotional awareness or just cognizance of things in their life. What helps me is literally to take out a pen and paper. It's kind of like the locus of control exercise where you literally draw a circle of like, me, do you have a pen and paper? I just don't want to put my phone down because of like, it's literally a circle of like what I could control. And then like around that, a much bigger circle, right? That's like what I cannot control, however you want to draw it. And I literally will draw, right? Oh, and I want to say, yeah, so there's the locus of control. I want to ask you to draw one more circle, and let me just explain it to you. So to me, I do the locus of control exercise. So there's the inner circle, which is what I could control now. Then I make another circle, which is what I can control soon. And then there's a much bigger circle of what I cannot control. And here's what helps me from the high functioning piece is that I have like things that I'm working on. Yes, exactly. So what I would encourage you to do is like literally for today or for this week, I'll literally put in the circle, what can I control? My mood, the food I'm going to eat, the people I'm going to spend time with, the tasks that I'm setting for myself, right? In there. I'll put that in there, right? Certain behaviors or activities that I'm going to put on there. Now, there might be things that are too much for me to expect for myself for now, but they are things that I probably can shift at some point in time. Maybe an argument I had with a friend. Maybe I want to incorporate it earlier bedtime and I just can't do it this week because I have a few deadlines, but I want to put it out there and I want my brain to put it on paper. So it's like, I'm seeing you. I know you're there. I'm not ignoring you. I am going to take care of you, right? Maybe for some people, it's like doing some healing, right? Going to therapy. Can't do it right now, right? And we don't encourage people, right? When people can't come to therapy either, like the timing isn't right or their schedule isn't right or they have to figure out some things with their finances or family life, we say, don't do it yet. You have to do it at a time that it makes sense. So that would be in that second circle. So you're literally like pen to paper, you're putting it out there. You might have a kid that needs attention, right? And then outside of that, I would put things out of my control. And the reason I write it down is because it's still validating. Like, let's say I have a really annoying neighbor. Okay. I had actually, for a couple of months, I had packages that kept being stolen. And I was, well, that's actually something I could control because I stopped ordering packages to my house. I started shifting it and ordering to the post office. But like, I couldn't control that there were some packages that I had to see if either I could get a refund or just let go that this person, you know, like I was choosing not to speak to them about it because of the complexity and it's something that's been resolved. But you want to still name the fact, like, I can't control this person. I cannot control that this person in my life or this friend or this person doesn't understand me, right? I can't control that this is my current, maybe for right now in this moment, this is my current financial situation. This is my current physical situation, right? So you literally want to write it down because you still want to you'll want to look at that and be like, can I get some validation? Can I get some support? Can I just acknowledge how difficult this is? Right? And sometimes the things that we can't control, we do move into the circle of like, maybe I could control it eventually, right? And sometimes it's just a matter of grieving or sharing or letting go of those things that are outside of our control and coming back to focusing on what can I control.
I think this is such a helpful exercise. And what comes to mind also is like, by writing it down and really taking the time for yourself to reflect, those things that are out of your control, you may be able to break those down even smaller into bits and pieces of that whole event or conflict with someone or whatever it is, into little things that you can control out of that one aspect that feels out of control. And it's like you said, you can slowly start shifting things more towards yourself and feeling more in control. And we know anxiety, right? That feeling in control is a huge soothing aspect to it. And of course, there's the whole foundational piece, which you're not going into, but just knowing what we can control and the solutions that we have are so empowering. And I think this is a very empowering like directive to try.
Thank you. Yeah, I think when you're talking about that, let's say I have someone in my life who I cannot control, that they could be manipulative or difficult, right? So or I have to see them at a wedding or whatever it is, or a boss. So I would put in, like, I think just to talk about that, what I would put in my control is I can control how I relate to their existence in my life. Sorry, it was paused for a minute. It's like I can control or I can choose to navigate the amount of energy, right? Or the way that I am interacting with this person, right? Or I am choosing to stay at this job, or I am choosing to interact, right? Or I am, right? So even the energetic exchange I know we had just put out a few blogs a couple of weeks ago, and actually the new one that's coming out, we have a free download that's coming out with our next email, and it's all about boundaries. There's a whole checklist that talks about signs that your boundaries are in check. It's amazing. It goes through it. Like,
that's awesome.
What are the body symptoms? How can you tell from your body? How can you tell from your mind? How can you tell from your behaviors that you're like good? And then there's like a different questionnaire. You literally just check it off, and it is cute visuals that your boundaries need some work. And then there's like a great exercise. Honestly, there's a boundaries exercise. But I think the piece here is also like, what are you choosing to do? Why am I saying this? Because some relationships or some dynamics, we also can choose how much we actually are choosing to engage or not engage. Right? Or if you know someone who's really emotionally limited, it's like, can you just develop your awareness of that person's capacity so that you pull your energy back in? and you interact like 1% on the basics that you, right? Like just interact like transactional. So I think sometimes we have a lot more power and control internally than we sometimes realize because we're so busy looking externally, or we're so busy feeling tired. And it's like how, like when I think about people who are successful, and I know I posted earlier about like failure and mistakes. I know for my own self, like so much of the time, the thing that helped me keep moving ahead was like, how can I turn back to myself? How can I turn back to myself? Where did I lose track of who I am? Where did I didn't work? Is it okay for me to be human? Is it okay for me to be like, you know, on this thing and learning this thing called life and learning lessons that maybe I didn't want to learn, but this is my life's lesson or my life's journey. And whenever I come back to myself, I come back with more confidence, with more wisdom. And when you come back to your own self and you're figuring out skills that help you regulate relationships that are nourishing, finding ways for you to function well, at the end of the day, like that's something, that's a gift you have for yourself, and no one can really take that away. They really can't.
And you created it for yourself.
Yeah.
And it's so powerful. Wow. I'm just taking all that in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if I have anything to add. I think that's like, what do you think? Is that a good landing point?
I think it's a perfectly, I don't, we don't have to add. I think now me and you actually have to meet because we have like a whole bunch of exciting things to work on. But basically, I wonder if you want to guide us through like maybe just like a deep belly breath before we kind of tab and hop up.
Yeah.
Of this.
Sure.
Yeah.
So with deep belly breathing, it's a technique to deepen our breath and slow our process. How this helps with anxiety is that sometimes anxiety through our body makes us shorten our breath. So just a little snippet of that. So maybe we'll just do 5 big, deep belly breaths. So breathing in, feeling the expansion into your lung and then into your belly. And breathing out from your belly and then out from your lungs. Again, really expanding the chest and filling your belly full with breath. And then out from the belly. And then out from the chest. It's a really, really deep breath. It's kind of hard for me to like talk while I'm doing it, but breathing really big, deep in. Filling the belly. And out. Two more times. Breathing in really deeply. Expanding the belly. And out from the belly. And then the chest. And last time, the biggest one yet.
I feel like I want to like just let yeah, it's like bringing the oxygen to my whole body. Like if anyone is here, this was a long convo, or whenever you're listening to it, allowing the oxygen to move throughout your whole body.
I feel like when you do belly breathing, it's like so, talk about nourishing, right? You like feel it like from your core expanding out, really oxygenated.
Yeah.
It's a nice calming boost.
Kate, I want to thank you for your time today. I want to thank
you
who was on or is going to be listening to this at a later point. I commend you for taking care of your health and being committed to growth, because every time there is somebody that I see who's committed to their healing and to becoming a healthy person who is taking care of themselves, I'm inspired. I'm inspired by my fellow people because I'm like, they're reminding me. And we're all part of this tribe, just supporting each other, wanting to do this thing called life with more love and more health and more connection. So thank you all for being on. Thank you, Kate. And I am going to try to link those things on here. And I'm excited to continue these conversations. And whoever is up yet for our mailing list, sign up. it literally, we have these free downloads once a month. I was looking at it and I was like, holy smokes, this one's cool. So, okay. Thank you all, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your week.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.